Hello and welcome to the Monday Agenda. The Monday Agenda today is looking onto the fragmented legislation in our country with regards to the pesticides management. As you may be aware, most countries in the world are not anymore using pesticides, chemicals onto the agriculture, but Africa poses such a huge market for these pesticides and fertilizers, which are harmful to our health. Now we're looking onto the issue of legislation, and with me on the program is Dr. Vera from MUHAS, Professor Alain from University of Bordeaux from France, and Ms. Dora Swai from an NGO called Agenda, which is actually responsible to disseminate, to continue to inform the mass on the use of, on the management of pesticides. So welcome very much to the program. Maybe to kickstart and understand the agenda and the program, what are pesticides and why are they harmful to our health?
Pesticides are chemicals that are used to destroy, meaning killing, or to repel, or to, disable pests. And pests are anything, an organism mostly, that are causing harm to us, humans, causing harm to our animals, causing harm to our infrastructure like buildings and so on, and they are a threat to us, so we call them pests. So anything that we use to get rid of the pests is called pesticides. We have both synthetic and natural chemicals, but they are, most of the time they are chemicals. And agriculture, livestock, and vector control and public health are the major users of pesticides. And in this country, we've been using pesticides for many years. Initially, when we started using them, we didn't know they were causing problems to non-targets because we were targeting the pests. But then we realized that no, they cause problems to non-target organisms, including humans. And that's why we came up with the concept of control. We want to control the use, we want to control the manufacture, we want to control pesticides throughout their life cycle.
Okay.
So this is in short what pesticides are.
There are also organisms in the agriculture that support the growth of, for instance, crops, supports the production of nitrogen which is needed in the crops.
Those are the non-target organisms, which I said non-target organisms, including humans. We have beneficial insects, like bees, we need honey. If we spray pesticides, we kill the bees. We have predators that help us control the pests actually naturally, but if we spray, they are most sensitive when they die. That's why the pests become virulent and they need us to use more.
The pesticides that are applied in the farms are not insects or pests specific. They attack every organism. Is that so?
Actually, the way they manufacture pesticides, they talk of sensitivity, being sensitive to specific animals or specific insects. But when you come to cellular level, we are same. So they will destroy the pests, but at the end of the day, they destroy other organisms that have cells also. When we apply pesticides, especially in agriculture, they say it's only 1% of what they apply reaches the pest. 99% goes into the environment. So that 99% that goes into the environment, that is what destroys the environment generally. And this is what we want to look at. Okay. When we come to control, some make pesticides which they put them at a specific target and they're slow release. Maybe they can reach the pests instead of spreading, but these are very few.
99% is what comes out, or rather what is not required. And this is what is now going on to non-target or to the environment. What are some of the consequences of or the effects and the impact onto our health of this 99%?
99% goes to the environment. Yes, it is true. And that is, however good you are in applying pesticide, you may end up to destroying the environment. When applying the pesticide, if the rain falls, most of the pesticide is washed to the waterways, to the places where it was not really intended to be. So you find that our rivers, our lakes get contaminated with the pesticides. Many people in our villages use water from the wells. You find those wells also get contaminated unintentionally. So the applying practices matter a lot. You really need to follow good practices when applying the pesticides, and that's why we are saying, as far as a farmer is concerned, many farmers don't know those good practices, so they just apply, and in the end of the day, you find that they are polluting the resources that were not really intended for those pesticides. And as a result, you find that fish is contaminated, and then as you said, bees, fish, other creatures living in the water, other creatures living in the soil get affected by the pesticides. Sometimes you find even fish dying. And we human beings, without knowing, you may find that we eat fish which is contaminated with pesticides, because no one, I don't think we have done much to know how much fish is contaminated with pesticide. Otherwise, we would have known the extent of the problem. But the problem is there.
Even the people who are applying, they don't know that they are contaminated because they don't feel. You know, when a pesticide gets onto your skin, you don't feel pain, you don't feel anything. So you're not worried that you are getting exposed. But in real sense, everybody in this country is exposed to pesticides in one way or the other. You are either exposed because you spray your house, killing mosquitoes, or killing cockroaches and the other pests inside the houses, or you are exposed because you eat food that has been sprayed by somebody who was trying to kill pests from the crop, vegetables, even maize, beans, and all sorts of foods that we eat is contaminated. Our waters are contaminated. In hotels, you are contaminated because these days hotels, they don't want to use mosquito nets anymore because they say they fumigate. There is nothing like fumigating, because when you are fumigating, it's like they do in the National Grain Reserve, where they have to cover the grains and then put in pellets that emit gas. That is fumigation. But what we do in houses, in offices, we are spraying. And it has become now routine. You find in hotels they have routine fumigation. Either they do it weekly, or they do it monthly, or they do it every day. That's what it is. In his hotel, they even warn the customers that we are doing the spray. So we are all exposed, and we don't know. Those who get acutely exposed, meaning they drink the pesticide maybe wanting to kill themselves, or they do it accidentally, especially children, they know that this thing that I'm feeling has been caused by the pesticide. So they go to hospital. But short term, those who are getting small doses, you and me, what we realize that has been caused by pesticides is you get cancer, you get diabetes, you become infertile, you can have children. There are so many diseases. You get all these non-communicable diseases.
Yes, NCDs, cancer, infertility and everything. Are these research-based? Are these from a study that has been done?
So many studies, not in Tanzania though. So when we start talking about non-communicable diseases being caused by pesticides, some people will say, Tanzania, we don't have data for Tanzania, so we are okay. We are human beings. If they do the study in America and they confirm that this particular pesticide causes this problem, it will cause the same problem to us as human beings. And unfortunately for us, we are not exposed to a single type of pesticides. We are being exposed to mixtures.
Okay.
People mix different types of pesticides, and each pesticide has its own mode of action. It has its own effect on your body. So you can imagine what will happen if you're exposed to a neurotoxic substance and then you get a cholinesterase inhibitor all at the same time. It is bad.
How have you, as a country in France, been able to negotiate or put your feet down on the ground and say no to pesticides that we could also learn as a country in Tanzania?
We have a lot of agricultural activities. I think we are the first country in Europe on agricultural production, and we use a lot of pesticide too. I think we are the third in the world using pesticides in volume, in tons, you know. And it's related of the type of agriculture, very intensive and very on large structures. And in the region of Bordeaux, we have a lot of wine and vineyard, and vineyard use also a lot of pesticides, and especially fungicide, because the vine plant is very fragile, and they have to treat sometimes 20 times a year in order to produce wine. And in our lab at the Bordeaux University, we have launched studies about epidemiological effect on with farmers, and since I think more than 20 years with my colleague Isabelle Baldi. And what we have shown that you have a relation with some type of cancer. You have relation with some type of neuro disease, as Alzheimer or Parkinson.
Okay.
And you have also trouble in the reproduction. It's clear, it's state. And for example, in France, for the farmers, when they have used pesticide, and if they had Parkinson, it's recognized as a professional disease, and it's taken in charge by the insurance system.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already done. You know, it means we have the proof about that. And concerning exposure of farmers, very often all the specialists and industry are focusing only on pesticide application. For sure, you have very high doses. It's concentrated, and it could be dangerous. We focus only on the application during the treatment,
yes.
You know, because you have concentrated products. Okay, it's dangerous. But what we have shown in vineyard, but also in apple growing in France, that we have a lot what we call re-entry activities. It means after the treatment, 1 or 2 weeks after, you have to go inside the field in order to cut leaves, in order to do a lot of work. Yes. And very often, it's in France, this kind of work as the women are in charge of this kind of work, and of work. And it means they stay into the leaves, into the plant, very close to the plant, and with a lot of pesticide residue on the leaves. And what we have shown when we have measured the level of contamination on the skin, yes, is in that phases, the level of contamination is higher than during the application phases. And it means that I think in Tanzania you could have the same program, yes, and women, children are involved in such activities in re-entry, and it's very, very a big issue to tackle.
Yeah, actually, we had a problem. You remind me, there was a time, it was way back in 2004, where the people who are spraying, like I say, they go in, they are dressed properly, they did the spraying in the morning, and then women were asked to go after about 3-4 hours to harvest because the flower farm had an order for flowers. 11 women collapsed in the farm, one at a time. One collapsed inside the greenhouse, the others carried the one who collapsed outside. 11 collapsed. And in the farm, they didn't even have a car to take them to hospital. So there was a school bus that was taking children to school that was diverted and carried those women to hospital. So they collapsed because they re-entered the farm that was sprayed too soon. But we are having similar problem now in where they grow onions, like in Lake Eyasi. We are seeing problems with women miscarrying. When we were going there, we used to go to the dispensary to find out what kind of problems people are coming up with in the field. We've been going there since 2006. Recently we went there, we found a signpost at the health center saying that we are offering services for miscarriage, for women who have miscarried daily, so people are welcome to go to the health center. Then we asked us, what's going on? We went in. The healthcare worker who was there said they used to have cases of miscarriages and send them to Karatu. But now because they have so many, they have requested the Ministry of Health to give them resources and facilities so that they can handle those cases at Mangola. This is something that was not there before.
Yeah.
So this is what we are learning now. Women are not spraying, but they are re-entering the fields after spraying. Even if it is after 2 weeks, we see the levels are very high.
Dr. Vera, maybe I could ask you again, what is our capacity as a country to actually tame and research some of these cases and make them public?
We can do that if we have the facilities.
Meaning?
Meaning we need funds. We have a very good lab at Arusha, TPRI.
Okay.
They have a very good lab for both residue analysis and formulation analysis. They don't have personnel. They don't have trained technicians because we had trained technicians, but of course they retired before they trained other people. There was a time where the employment was not there and there was no succession plan, so
Is
to
this
say.
TPRI is a government institute?
TPRI is a government institute.
And if it's a government institute, how is it operating without resources? Just to understand, because the Monday agenda wants to bring that to light so that something is done about it.
TPRI has a very long history.
Okay.
And this history is what came into the legislation. You wanted to talk about fragmented
Well, we are coming to fragmented legislation on
that is the
yes.
TPRI legislation. TPRI was under the East Africa Community before.
Okay.
When we had the East Africa Community that collapsed in the first one,
77.
TPRI was one of the institutions that were under the community.
Okay.
But initially it was the Colonial Research Unit. It started by screening pesticides that were used for vector control, mostly mosquitoes.
Okay.
And it was WHO that were trying pesticides at the institute. So later on, the pesticide developed. People started using pesticides as fungicides. They started using pesticides as herbicides and so on. So TPRI also evolved in the same way. They were using pesticides not knowing that they are harmful.
Okay.
Just like everybody else. This is a good thing. We are killing pests. It doesn't harm us. But later on, they realized that it was causing harm. And that is when it started. East Africa Pesticide Control Organization started at TPRI. Before it started working, the East Africa Community collapsed.
Okay.
When the East Africa Community collapsed, the Tanzania government, because they had the infrastructure now,
Yes.
TPRI was built in Arusha, it is in Tanzania, they decided to continue with the work that was started before during the East Africa Community on pesticides. So they enacted a law that gave TPRI the mandate to do research on pesticides in all aspects, from efficacy to disposal, and to control the use of pesticides in the country.
Oh, okay.
So they had the mandate to register and control all the pesticides under the Tropical Pesticide Research Institute Act.
Okay. Now,
And they were
TPRI,
getting funds from the government.
through the Ministry of
Through
Agriculture
the
or through the
Ministry
Ministry
of
of...
Agriculture.
Okay.
So the ministry had a budget to support research at TPRI and of course to give subvention for salaries and all this. But as time went by, the government started cutting down, and the cutting down started with influence from the IMF and so on. They came up with the structural adjustment programs that saw government research institutes like Taro, Taliro collapse. They had to go to become institutes within the ministry. TPRI survived, but they were told to generate their own funds for to be able to run. And they were using the money they were getting from pesticide registration now. They have to pay the sales fees and fees to try the pesticides to run the labs at TPRI. But later on now, the ministry again, the same Ministry of Agriculture, decided to remove those roles from TPRI and send them to the ministry under the Plant Protection Act. By doing so, TPRI were left with no support. They were only getting salary. So everybody was trying to fend for themselves, trying to get funded from outside.
Okay.
So it has been going on like that. There is no control now because pesticides are controlled under which law?
Wow.
Plant Protection Act, Tropical Pesticide Research Institute Act. The Ministry of Livestock decided, no, we want to control acaricides, so they started their own act. So that is the fragmentation in law that we are talking about, which has made pesticides in this country be used without control, I would say.
Wow.
And we are having a lot of pesticides, and we had a problem of stockpiles. Maybe later on, Dora will talk about it.
We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about it because of no control. There's no control, so everybody is bringing in as much as they can. If you don't use the pesticide, it becomes obsolete. If it becomes obsolete, we cannot use it, we cannot destroy it because we don't have the capacity. So we piled the pesticides, and the government was the culprit because they had a lot of stocks, and these stocks had to be removed and sent to Europe for destruction. It spent a lot of money. In the process, we said, no, we need to come up with a strategy to prevent future accumulation.
Correct.
And we sat down. Actually, NGOs were involved, and the NEMC, which is the National Environment Management Council, was the coordinator, was steering this activity, and the Ministry of Agriculture was involved. They came up with a roadmap to prevent future accumulation of pesticides. And we came up with a pesticide law now because we wanted to have Pesticide Management Act to control all the pesticides, not only plant protection substances or acaricides. We drafted a law. It was supposed to be tabled in Parliament in 2013. It never did. Until now, we hear they've now come up with another thing, which they want to combine TPRI and Plant Health Services in one institution. And that is the disaster I'm talking about, because these laws are conflicting.
Okay.
There is a conflict of interest for both. Because when you are regulating pesticide, it's because you want to protect non-target organisms
Yes.
and the environment. And when you want to do plant health services, you want to increase productivity by using pesticides. So how can these two work together?
No, they can't.
They cannot work together.
Let's clearly give it a very good time to look onto that. You are watching the Monday Agenda, and the Monday Agenda today is talking to experts in the field of pesticides and pesticides management, as you're looking onto the legislation issues on pesticides management. They're fragmented, and this is now what is going to be on to my very next question, because if the government certainly is aware that, you know, the consequences, people die, well, if they collapse, that means they stand on the verge of death as well. diseases, Parkinson. It's, we used to call these white men diseases, but they're now, the likes of cancer. They never used to be in Tanzania. I can't recall cancer when I was growing up. And many more, infertility. The government is aware of all the things, yet we do not have strong legislation. They're fragmented.
Their main interest is on production.
Production of
food,
okay.
And maybe other agricultural produce for export or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think the issue I was talking about health, if there is acute poisoning, they will be listening because they know pesticides are killing people. But people are not dying because of pesticide directly. Scientists are doing research. They are publishing papers on pesticide effects and all this, and the research stays in files. I don't think it reaches the policy makers. So we realized that at MUHAS. That's why last month we had what we call a policy dialogue, where we tried to highlight all the problems of pesticides, from acute poisoning, non-communicable diseases, environmental contamination, and all this. We made policy briefs because we are now trying to talk to the policymakers, trying to show them that the research that we do has a bearing on the policies that they are making. So we want them to use our research findings and make decisions. And the research findings as far as pesticides are concerned, they show that pesticides are not good for our health or our environment. And as we were at the policy dialogue, because we invited different stakeholders, including members of parliament, somebody came up with, he raised an issue that, the issue of fragmentation of law has been taken care of. We said, how? They said there is a law that is going to be tabled in parliament in January that is going to bring together plant health services and TPRI in order to harmonize the pesticide law. We said that won't work. And then the members of parliament said, how come you people are not aware about this law? You are stakeholders. You are supposed to be involved in drafting this law and make sure that issues that are related to health and environment are incorporated in the law. We said we are not aware of it. Then they said there's something wrong. TPRI is interested in controlling the use of pesticides and making sure that our health and our environment stays safe. And Plant Health Services is interested in producing agricultural produce for feeding people and export.
Some stakeholders, and I understand you come from an NGO that is keen onto the issues of pesticide management. Were you aware? Were you involved? Did you know about this? Because, agenda is big.
We were not aware. We learned about that in the same workshop which we held in Morogoro last month. And that's why when we heard for the first time that there was a law, an act that is going to be tabled in the parliament in January, but we were not involved at any stage.
So have you tried to establish or to find out who is behind it?
The farmers apply pesticides. They get acute and chronic problems, but such problems rarely are reported to the government. Up to the time we are speaking, there is no system which reports problems that happen to farmers as regards use of pesticides to the government. Under the Rotterdam Convention, there is supposed to be such a system operating in each country which is a member of the convention, of the Rotterdam Convention, which deals about the pesticides management. But that reporting from Tanzania has never started.
You're talking about the knowledge, the awareness of the public sector, of the government. But we're looking onto, for instance, the policymakers, who are the MPs, who are spending, I believe, time in their constituencies, and most of these are into the village where agricultural practices are taken care of. People get sick at the peripherals. These cases are reported. Are you saying there's a gap?
Are not reported.
They're not reported.
Even at the health center when they go, most of the doctors, they treat the symptoms you have brought to them. They don't care about the cause. And even if they care about the cause, sometimes people go there without being able to explain exactly what happened to them. So the doctors don't get sufficient information to start to put that recording. And even if that recording goes to the doctor, the system of reporting doesn't show this is a problem with pesticide or is not caused by the pesticide.
Okay.
So we need really reporting. We need to elevate the problems to the policymakers. We need to elevate the problems to researchers need to do research. There are so many practices which are, we are told, do this when you apply pesticide. There are instructions. Who know those instructions? Even those who are distributing the pesticide, those who are called the traders of pesticides, you may find that they don't know those instructions. So they sell pesticide, they will tell you go and wear protective equipment. Protective equipment in such environment of Tanzania, first, they are very friendly because the climate is too hot and you need to wear plastic boots, maybe you need to cover your whole body, mask and what. They may be convenient to this weather, and even if they are convenient, given the poverty level of the Tanzanian farmer, how many farmers will afford to buy such kind of protective equipment?
Okay.
So such things were supposed to be reported along with the Rotterdam Convention reports, but they are not included there.
As a professor at a very renowned university, how then can, do you think, Tanzania and Africa large, stop the importation of pesticides? Look onto the future of generation, the soil, the environment, the people especially. Yes. How do we then, how do we stop this dumping?
First, this problem has been discussed in a very recent report from the Network of African Science Academia from the 12th of November. And in this report, they say that the structure of agriculture in Africa changed a lot because we could think that in Africa agriculture is only small farmers, family farms, etc., etc. But it changed a lot, and you have a lot of big farm in intensive production, and this kind of system of production will use a lot of intrants and pesticide for sure. And for example, they say in this report that in France, 2 months ago, we banned 2 types of neonicotinoids pesticides. And from these 3 banned pesticides, 2 of the 3 are the most used in Africa, for example.
Wow.
And they say, for example, in Cameroon, they have 35 formulations of this pesticide using in Cameroon, and in South Africa it's 130 registered pesticides.
Wow.
And it's banned in Europe, it's banned in France and in Europe, and it's not banned in Africa. And I think it's very, very, very huge issue, because you will have the more dangerous pesticides that we don't want to use anymore in Europe. It's the first step. What I could say is that in France we have had such conflict of interest between Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Health. I think in every country
yes,
you could encounter this kind of conflict. And what is important, it's 10 years ago the French government decided to create a new agency at the top level of the governmental agency in charge of environmental issues and on pesticide registration. It's called ANSES. And this, it's interesting in that structure, that this agency could be requested by several organizations. It could be by government and ministry. It could be also by stakeholders and board of administration, and also NGO and labor union. It means if one of these organizations is questioning about the dangerous property of such product, chemical or pesticides, they could request this agency to do more detailed analysis. And it's very interesting how it changed the way we manage the question. And for example, 1 month ago, this agency announced the withdrawal of 36 products containing glyphosate. Okay. We still use glyphosate in France. President Macron says that in 2 years normally we will stop using glyphosate, but it's not very easy to manage it, and perhaps it will be not in 2 years. But for sure, this agency decided to stop the use of 36 product containing glyphosate. It's already done, you know. And another thing could be interesting, even if we add this agency, it's very important. Civil organization could contest the fact that this agency has registered some pesticides. And it was 1 week ago, the court of the Nice administrative court withdrew a marketing authorization coming from this agency for 2 insecticides. Oh. In fact, some NGO go in court in order to contest the registration of the 2 new pesticides. And in fact, the NGO win. And the agency say that they will be not appealing against the decision of the court.
And really, as pertinent as that information, I really wish to spend more time to dwell into the recent study that has been the study that has been published. But the time again, Mama Vera, you mentioned earlier on the fact that there's a gap in Tanzania. TPRI emerged from the collapsed East Africa community. We have the new East Africa community now. And then TPRI, I'm learning, is now trying, or is attempting to push the agenda in the parliament, which stakeholders have not been involved. The government does not have resources, or has not allocated enough resources towards research, towards a lot of work in preventive and protection and all that knowledge dissemination, especially on the consumer side. On the other hand, development partners, the likes of the French embassy, are keen to support. Is it high time we look onto their side of their support, or there's something more that the government can do? And what can the likes of French embassy, for instance, do towards giving us the technical support as well as resources to conduct our own research, or to be able to do our own researches and findings and publications, so that the Tanzanians and the Africans at large may learn that, you know, the excessive or the application of pesticides, however little it could be, is lethal?
Okay, thank you. Maybe I'll just correct you a little bit on the fact that we learned from the TPRI representatives in that meeting in Morogoro about the law, but I'm sure it is not TPRI that is taking the law to Parliament. Okay. It is the Ministry of Agriculture. So that is a little bit, I think for TPRI, as a parastatal, they are under the ministry. Yes. So whatever the ministry wants to do with that institution, they can do. They don't have a voice to refuse what the ministry wants. So, like you say, we have problems with pesticides. What can we do? As far as I'm concerned, Tanzania was leading the whole of Africa in pesticide control. Actually, we were an envy. I remember I attended a meeting in The Hague, on the Codex meeting, which looks at residues in food. and I explained what we do at TPRI, and I was working at TPRI at that time. Everybody was surprised. The African partners were so surprised. You have this institute? I said, yes. A lab? Yes. You do residue analysis? Say, yes. A product, before it comes into the country, we have to make sure that it is the right quality. I said, please, can you become a reference lab for Africa? We said, why not? So I came back. We wrote a proposal. We wanted to become a reference lab for Africa. And the Ministry of Agriculture, as a mother ministry, said, no, we are not ready yet. But we have helped so many countries in Africa. We have helped Ethiopia, Botswana, and West African countries to set up their pesticide regulation based on the system we had initially at TPRI. So we were a role model for all the African countries. What happened in 1997 is a puzzle to me. Why the Ministry of Agriculture decided to break up that law and come up with fragmented laws, that is what I don't understand. So I would urge the government to go back to the drawing board and decide what they want to do with pesticides as far as regulation is concerned. Do they want to really protect humans and environment, or they want to produce to feed the people? We need to go back to the drawing board.
I also understand that the French government, for instance, is pushing the agroecology agenda, and they're ready and keen to support in the areas of research and technical skills.
They are.
Yes.
So what we hope to get support from the French, they've been helping us with promoting agroecology, but still they can help us, like make the problems of pesticides visible. Help us with the research, like we can analyze the residues in food, help our labs with capacity to do laboratory analysis. We have the lab with TPRI, it has sophisticated modern equipment, but we don't have trained technicians to handle that. So they can help us with training of the people. They can also help us with funding MUHAS students for masters or whatever, to at least explore the forces, politics that are involved in pesticides regulation and use and whatever, so that at least we can identify who is pushing what, so that at least we can help in trying to advise the government on how to control. We know the industry is very influential. They can influence even the Ministry of Agriculture. It's in saying that you can never produce without pesticides. We see agroecology. We are producing, we might use pesticides, but we are producing using natural pesticides maybe, and we choose pesticides that are less harmful. So they can help us, do the research like they've done for cancer research. We can also try to do epidemiology of pesticides to see how much pesticides contribute to the non-communicable diseases. And this we need facilitation, because the government does not give us funds for research. And you cannot get a donor to fund you. They are the ones who are selling the pesticides to us. You cannot tell them to fund you to find the impact of pesticide on our health, because they know you're going to prevent.
Yeah.